Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Crackin' Packin' Lackin'. And we're doing a little bit different. Doing something a little different today. We are going to review the new Commander decks for Brothers War. We'll first start off with Mishra, Eminent one. Costs 2 colorless, a blue, a black, and a red. And its ability is, at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of a target non-creature artifact you control, except its name is Mishra's Warform, and it's a 4/4 construct artifact creature in addition to its other types. Gains haste until end of turn, and then you sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. Now, my friends and I, we ended up being able to play with these yesterday evening, and out of the gate, I feel that the Mishra deck is significantly weaker than the Urza deck. What we ended up coming down with is I had a artifact out that when it entered the battlefield, destroys a permanent. Well, because of Mishra's ability, you can then create a token copy of that artifact. But right now, we're going to go through and we're going to look at a couple of the cards that are included, and they're all going to be in these retro frames. So we've got Executioner's Capsule. This is going to be one of the bridges. So this is Dross Forge Bridge. Enters tapped, it's indestructible, it's an artifact land, and it taps for a black or a red. You've got Rakdos Signet. Yeah, and I purchased these thinking mostly for this retro frame artwork. I mean, it is going to, I believe, appreciate in value. We've got a nice looking island. We got Brutaclad, and creature tokens you control have haste, and then at the beginning of combat, you create a 2/1 blue Phyrexian mirror artifact creature token, and then you can have all tokens become a copy of another token. All right, yeah. Is It Boilerworks? Cursed Mirror, which, I hadn't seen this before since the set, and it is tapped. It's an artifact. Tap it to add a red. But when it enters the battlefield, you can have it become a copy of any creature on the battlefield until end of turn. Which goes great with Mishra, because then instead of just artifacts, you can then copy a target non-artifact because he makes them into a creature. You've got Darkwater Catacombs, so one of those filter lands. Glint Raker, that's a flying 1/3, and it gets +X/+0, where X is the highest mana value among artifacts you control. And then when it deals combat damage to a player, you may reveal that many cards from the top of your library, put an artifact card revealed this way into your hand, and the rest in your graveyard. Okay, you've got Idol of Oblivion. Tap to draw a card. Activate only if you've created a token. So, that would happen after you've used Mishra's ability. And then you pay 8 mana, sack it, you create a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi creature token. You've got another beautiful island. Imri, Lurker of the Loch. Cost 1 less for each artifact you control. And then when it enters the battlefield, mill 4 cards. Tap. Choose target artifact in your graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. It's pretty good, especially when you're looking for a bunch of artifacts. You've got Feed the Swarm. Destroy target creature or enchantment opponent controls. You lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. This is a relatively newer card, but it does something that black isn't usually able to do, which is hit enchantments. Although, Wizards of the Coast has kind of said, color pie? What's that? And then this is the piece that I was using to combine with Mishra. Spine of the Isha. It costs 7 mana. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target permanent. Then when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you return it to its owner's hand. So a little bit of protection there. It works great when Mishra makes a copy of it as a 4/4, and it then comes in, destroys something, and then you have a 4/4 body to swing out. Yeah, great. I love it. All right, moving on. So then we've got Slowbad, Goblin Tinkerer. You sacrifice an artifact. Target artifact gains indestructible until end of turn. A little bit of protection. And so that would actually work good with Spine. So you sack it, goes to the graveyard, but then goes to hand, and then you save something else. All right. Terramorphic Expanse. You know, it's one of those basic... it fetches a basic land, but brings it in tapped. Blast Furnace Hellkite. So for 9 mana, you get a 5/5, and then Artifact Offering. You may cast this spell as though it had flash by sacrificing an artifact and paying the difference in mana cost between this and the sacrificed artifact. All right. It's flying and double strike, and creatures attacking your opponents have double strike. So this will give your opponent's creatures double strike if they're attacking another player. We've got Chaos Warp, great red removal. The owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library. They reveal the top card of their library after shuffling. If it's a permanent card, they put it onto the battlefield. Fareed, Enterprising Salvager. Whenever a non-token artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a colorless artifact token named Scrap. Pay 1 in a red, sack an artifact, choose 1. Put a 1/1 counter on it, and it gains menace. Goad target creature, discard a card, draw a card. We've got another filter land with Shadow Blood Ridge. You've got a Scry land, Temple of Deceit. Oni, Cult Anvil. Whenever 1 or more artifacts you control leave the battlefield during your turn, create a 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature token. It only triggers once per turn. And then you tap, sack an artifact. It deals 1 damage to each opponent. You gain 1 life. You've got Arcane Signet. You've got another one of the bridges. Mist Vault Bridge. I believe there's probably going to be 3 bridges in total. You've got a nice retro frame mountain. Hellkite Igniter. Flying, haste, 5/5. Pay 1 in a red. It gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control. The awesome thing about that is it doesn't limit saying how many times you can pay that ability. So if you have 5 artifacts, you can give this thing +10/+0 until end of turn. Wayfarer's Bauble. You're able to go and search up a basic land, put it on the battlefield. It's a great colorless ramp. Nile Spellbomb. You 1 mana, and then you can tap it, sack it, exile a player's graveyard. And then when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you can pay black. If you do, draw a card. You've got Mindstone that taps for a colorless, or you can pay 1 and tap it, sack it, and draw a card. You got another Retro Frame Island. Commander Sphere. Rakdos Carnarium. Do love that. I am loving the retro frames. Lithoform Engine. This is a great artifact. So it costs 4 mana. For 2 mana, and tapping it, you copy target activated or triggered ability you control. You can choose new targets for the copy. And then you can pay 3 mana to tap it, and then copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You can choose new targets. Or you pay 4 mana, tap it, copy target permanent spell you control. So, very good. All right, we've got Faithless Looting. Draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards. Workshop Elders. Artifact creatures you control have flying. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may have target non-artifact creature you control become a 0/0 artifact. If you do, put 4 1/1 counters on it. And so that doesn't say until end of turn, so you can start turning all of your artifacts in your deck into creatures permanently. Okay, Mirror works. 5 mana. Whenever another non-token artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2 mana. If you do, create a token that's a copy of it. That's for non-token artifacts. So it does apply for creatures. You can work. That does work. Straconic Resonator. Awesome ability with Mishra's ability. Pay 2 mana, tap it. Copy target triggered ability you control. You can choose new targets for it. So this was one of those cards that I was using to help blow up other things. So for 2 mana, you copy his ability because it's triggered as when, whenever, and at. All right, you got Dimir Signet. All right, and then you've got Ashnod the Uncaring. It's got Death Touch. It's a 1/4, and whenever you activate an ability of an artifact or creature that isn't a mana ability, if one or more permanents were sacrificed to activate it, you may copy that ability. You can choose new targets. And so she works as an alternative commander for your deck. They both have the same exact mana value. With her, you're losing 4 power. I might give it a try and see how strong it is of a commander. I don't know. All right, and so you got Bedevil. Oh, a little too high, sorry. Destroy target artifact, creature, or planeswalker for a black, and a red. You got Mazio. So sorry if I'm butchering that. Visionary Architect for 1 and 2 blue. And then you can pay 4 blue or 3 and a blue, tap it, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the highest mana value among artifacts you control. You can put an artifact from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So if you can manage to hit a pretty strong, like a pretty high up there artifact, that's pretty good. And it's also, a little bit of advantage being able to work from your deck and not your hand. You got Pedim, Console of Innovation for 3 and a blue, and then artifacts you control have hexproof. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control the artifact with the highest mana value or tied for the highest mana value, draw a card. And he is a 1/4. We've got another Scryland, Temple of Epiphany. Myriad Landscape, enters tapped. You can add a colorless or pay 2 mana, tap it, sack. Get 2 basics of the same kind. You've got Metalwork Colossus. It's 11 mana. Costs X less, where X is the number of total mana value of non-creature artifacts you control. Sack 2 artifacts, return it from your graveyard to your hand. And it's a 10/10. I don't know if you guys noticed, but you can see the little tombstone up top. Some cards have it, others don't. All right, so you got Dreamstone Hedron. And then, so it taps for 3 colorless, and then you can pay 3 mana to tap it, sack, draw 3 cards. You've got Abrade for 1 and a red, choose 1, deals 3 damage to target creature, and then destroy target artifact. The infamous Blasphemous Act. It's a sorcery. It costs 1 less for each creature on the battlefield, deals 13 damage to each creature. You got Traxos, Scourge of Krog. Costs 4 mana. It's got Trample. When it enters the battlefield tapped and doesn't untap during your untap step. Whenever you cast a historic spell, you untap it. You've got Geth, Lord of the Vault. It costs 4 and 2 black. It's a 5/5 legendary creature with Intimidate, which means it can't be blocked except by artifact and other creatures that share a color with it, so they have to be black or artifacts. You can pay X and a black, put target artifact or creature card with mana value X from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control tapped. Then that player mills X cards. You've got Giora, Weatherlight Captain. 2, a blue and a red. Whenever you cast a historic spell, which is a legendary, a saga, or an artifact, you draw a card. And she is a 3/3. You've got Fact or Fiction. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent sorts those cards into 2 piles. You put 1 into your hand, 1 in the graveyard. You've got Audacious Reshapers for 2 and a red. You tap it, sack an artifact, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an artifact card, put that card onto the battlefield, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Audacious Reshapers deals damage to you equal to the number of cards revealed this way. You've got, I believe that is the 3rd Scryland. And then Smoldering Ash. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. Herald of Anguish costs 5 and 2 black, and it's got Improvise, and you can tap artifacts, and each artifact that you tap will pay for 1 of the mana that it costs. It's got Flying, and at the beginning of your end step, each opponent discards a card, and then you can pay 1 and a black, sack an artifact, target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. You got Master Transmuter, 3 mana and a blue. Pay a blue, tap it, return an artifact you control to its owner's hand. You may put an artifact card from your hand onto the battlefield. That's a 1/2. Got Crumbling Necropolis. It's a tri-land. Got Felwar Stone for 2 mana. You tap, add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. You've got a Mountain. Hedron Archive for 4 mana, tap, add 2 mana, and then you can pay 2 mana, tap it, sack, draw 2 cards. Thirst for Knowledge, draw 3 cards, discard 2 cards unless you discard an artifact. You've got another Mountain. You've got Prismatic Prism. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card, pay 1 mana, tap it, add 1 mana of any color. Basically just mana fixes you. Thoughtcast, 4 mana and a blue, and then Affinity for artifacts that cost 1 less for each artifact you control. Draw 2 cards. Servo Schematic, 2 mana. When it enters the battlefield, is put into a graveyard from the battlefield. Create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. Buried Rune, it's a land. Tap, add a colorless, pay 2 mana, tap it, sack it, and return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Those are a little high up. Now this is a great one. I'm not going to even bother trying to pronounce it, but it's X, 2 mana, and 2 black. You lose X life and you create X tapped Power Stone tokens. Then all creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn for each artifact you control. Awesome card. With 10 mana, so total of 10 mana, but 6 mana into X. You get a board wipe. You then get 6 mana to spend on your artifacts or abilities on other turns. Phenomenal. All right. And I say 6 because 6 is kind of that magic number against the Urza deck of, yeah, those tokens get pretty big pretty quick. You've got Oblivion Stone, 3 mana, and then pay 4 mana, put a fate counter on target permanent, pay 5 mana, tap it, destroy, sack it, and then destroy each non-land permanent without a fate counter on it, then remove all fate counters from all permanents. So just another board wipe. Reliquary Tower, you have no maximum hand size, tap, add a colorless. You've got a Swamp. Smelting Vat for 4 mana, and then you pay 1 mana, sacrifice another artifact. Oh, and you also have to tap it. Reveal the top 8 cards from your library, put up to 2 non-creature artifact cards with total mana value less than or equal to the sacrificed artifact's mana value from among them onto the battlefield, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Basically, you sack something, and then for the mana value of that thing, you put 2 equal to or less than the total. You've got a Swamp. You've got Scavenged Brawler for 6 mana. Flying, Vigilance, Trample, Lifelink. Pay 5 mana, exile it from your graveyard. Choose target creature. You put 4+1/+1 counters on it. A flying counter, vigilance counter, trample counter, and lifelink counter on that creature. That is actually phenomenal. Yeah, for only 5 mana. I think I'm going to buy a couple of those as singles to put in a couple decks. All right, here's another one of the bridges. You've got Silver Bluff Bridge. You've got an island. Command Tower. Vault of Whispers. Exotic Orchard. Now, you've got Soul Ring. So, if you know, the promos that had gone out before of Soul Ring, they currently sell for about $12 online. That number's been a little bit, but this is what it looks like. Basically, they both have that same retro frame. This is, however, a foil. So these might end up being worth a little extra with being in the retro frame. You've got Miskoth Wellspring for 2 mana. When it enters the battlefield or put into a graveyard, you may search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle. Okay, you've got an island. You've got Machine God's Effigy. For 4 mana, you may have Machine God's Effigy enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it's an artifact and has tap, add a blue. All right, you've got Expressive Iteration for a blue and a red. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, put one onto the bottom of your library, and exile one of them. You may play the exiled one this turn. So basically you get to draw 2 cards and throw one away. You've got Ash Barrens, the Great Furnace, or just Great Furnace. Feign the Broker, 2 and a black, tap it, sack a creature, put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature. Tap, remove a counter from a creature you control, create a treasure token. Tap, sack an artifact, create a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying. Pay 3 mana and a black, untap, Feign the Broker. You've got Silas Wren, Seeker Adept. Pay 1, a blue and a black. It's got Death Touch. It's a 2/2. And when it deals combat damage to a player, choose target artifact card in your graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. And it has Partner. So I'll take a look and see if we have a red mana partner in our deck. I don't believe we do, but possible. You've got Trading Post for 4 mana. You pay 1, tap it, discard a card, gain 4 life. Pay 1, tap it, pay a life, create a 0/1 white goat. Pay 1 mana, tap it, sack a creature, return target artifact creature from your graveyard to hand. Pay 1 mana, tap it, sack an artifact, draw a card. Seat of the Synod, taps for a blue. Got a Swamp. You've got Demir Aqueduct. It takes a land, puts it back in your hand, and on your next turn it will tap for a blue and a black. Path of Ancestry. You add 1 mana of any color, and whenever mana is spent that way to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, you scry. You've got a Mountain. Oh, sorry. You've got Mnemonic Sphere for 1 and a blue. Pay 1 and a blue, sack it, draw 2 cards. And then as Channel, you can pay a blue, discard it, draw a card. You've got Thrawn Dynamo. Pay 4 mana, and then you can tap it to add 3 mana. You've got a Swamp. Wondrous Crucible for 7 mana. Permanents you control have Ward 2, which means to be targeted, you have to pay an extra 2 mana. And at the beginning of your end step, mill 2 cards, and then exile a non-land card at random from your graveyard. Copy it. You may play that. You may cast a copy without paying its mana cost. And then the last one we're looking at is Ichor Wellspring. For 2 mana, it enters the battlefield or is put into a graveyard, put into a graveyard from the battlefield. You draw a card. Now, looking at this, you're going to want to make some tokens. Honestly, the way I won yesterday was frankly by frustrating our opponents, by destroying everything every time they recast it. We probably would not have won if our other player was playing with Urza correctly, because Urza actually has affinity for artifact creatures. So this spell costs 1 less for each artifact creature you control. And we're going to get into that one in our next video. Mishra is purchasing a Precon for $45. I'd say I'd give it a C+, maybe a B-. The way to win, it is kind of just bring the hammer down as much as you can. There isn't like a, hey, you're going to build critical mass this quick or anything like that. But in our next video, we'll get into Urza. Thank you for joining us, and, remember to subscribe, like, and we now have a Facebook page, so feel free to like us there as well. Have a good day.